Hello, everyone. I love seeing you all voting in. This is amazing. You're all very welcome back to the Big Night In, proudly sponsored by Green and Blacks. It's so great to see you all. We're delighted you're here and thank you so much for your support. Welcome back, especially to those of you who joined us during lockdown part one, which seems like 100 years ago. And I know there's lots of familiar faces coming in. And to those of you joining us for the first time, we're delighted to have you here at our Big Night In. You are looking lovely. We hope you'll all have fun and a bit of a distraction for the next hour. So this is the start of a series of Saturday nights, and I think it's brilliant to have something in the diary again. And we hope the Big Nights In are going to go some way to banishing the pandemic gloom over the next few couple of months anyway. Now, I mentioned Green and Blacks, our sponsor, earlier, and as always, we're going to have a quite massive hamper of chocolate to give away tonight. And the hamper is going to be won by the person who comes up with the best comment or question posted on Twitter. And the hashtag for tonight is IT Big Night In, as you can see there behind me. Hashtag IT Big Night In. So go on Twitter, post your comment or question. It'd be really nice to get trending this evening because it's not like there's much happening in the world. It's not like the president of the free world is in hospital with COVID or any fake news like that. Anyway, as always, in the last 10 minutes of the event, if you have a question for our guest this evening, just stick up your blue hand. Hope you can all see the blue hand there. And my co-producer, Suzanne Brennan, where are you, Suzanne? Give us a wave.
Hiya.
The lovely Suzanne, as Paul Daniels would say, will unmute you so you can ask your question. And one more tiny bit of housekeeping is that, of course, you're all muted, but we do have a way to welcome our guest and to show our appreciation at the end. And that is what I call it's not a technical term, but the waggly hand. So we do this instead of applauding. And a big waggly hand welcome to all of you. Now, let me introduce you to our guest this evening. She's a truly remarkable woman who's had a challenging life, but who has approached those challenges with determination and enthusiasm. She was born and reared on a halting site called Labra Park in Ballyfermot. And despite the challenges I mentioned there, she and her twin sister Sally became the first members of the Labra Park community to enter third level education. And she's gone even further heights since then, becoming the first traveller woman in the Oireachtas, when earlier this year, in a piece of excellent pandemic good news, she was appointed Senator by Taoiseach Micheál Martin. She's a community worker, she's an activist, a feminist and a force of nature, and she's a mother now too, and we might even catch a glimpse of the lovely baby Billy. Will you please welcome to the Big Night In, coming to us from her home in County Donegal, Senator Eileen Flynn.
Hi, Roisin. Thanks very much, and thanks for having me on the show.
I'm delighted to have you there. And I'm just admitting Audrey there, Suzanne, because Audrey, you're okay. You're admitting everyone, Suzanne. That's great. Eileen, I'm so happy to have you here because I think you're an incredible person and I know that people are going to love getting to know your story. But before we go back to your beginnings, tell me about getting that call from Micheál Martin about being appointed as senator and what it meant to you, because it must have been a massive moment.
Yeah, I got the phone call at about 3:30 on Saturday, the 27th of June, and like I didn't know what to say. You know, at one point I was like Micheál Martin, then it was like Taoiseach, and you know, it just like overwhelmed all of a sudden. Like you go from a nobody to a somebody, but also the level of work that I put into the campaign to get elected by local authorities, and I missed out by a very narrow margin. So I was delighted to get that phone call. And I think, like, you know, I'm not one to always give credit to politicians or anything, but a credit to the three leaders for making this change possible, that my community and other ethnic minority groups now may have a bit of hope for our political system going forward.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was a brilliant piece of pandemic good news, and I was cheering when I heard it. Tell me what it's been like. Tell us all what it's been like in the last few months in the Shannon, because I presume it's kind of a culture shock. I know you studied in Trinity, and we'll talk about that later. But was it that kind of feeling going into somewhere that you felt like it was very unknown?
Yes, I'm usually outside the front gates protesting, so for me it was very different. The first time I got up to speak, I didn't feel a choice only to get up and speak to Mark today, but I was so nervous. And again, I think it's only now that the overwhelm is coming. It's kind of dying down a little bit when I'm in the chamber speaking. I I come across very confident, but like many other people, sometimes I can be my own worst critic, my own worst enemy, So for me, it was and still is. Sometimes I feel a little bit, oh, am I good enough to be here? But then, I am actually. I'm really good enough to be there. I'm just as good as everybody else in the room, And that was a quote that I've heard years ago from a close friend of mine that always said to me, "I remember." If you're not better than anybody else in the room, you're just as good. And I keep on reminding myself that, that I'm just as good. And I have wealth of experience of inequality at a personal level, but also from friends, from family, from like the inequalities even from living in Ballyfermot. I bring so much around the table, which I need to believe in and be confident around. And yeah, the only worry I have is around being pigeonholed. It's around being their traveller senator. My name is Eileen Flynn, who is a traveller that is a senator, and I don't want to be pigeonholed. While at the heart of what I do is around equality for the traveller community. Also have other ambitions and other communities that I care very passionate about. So I have so much to give, and I want to give. So for me, it is, yes, the heart is traveller equality, but it's bringing other communities with me along that journey.
I love what you said there about, if no one's better than you in the room, you're just as good. Like I say to my kids, you're not better than anyone else and no one else is better than you. And I'm trying to drum that into their heads just in terms of comparing ourselves, which we all do, I think. But I need to ask you something before I talk to you about your beginnings, because I think, everyone would like to hear your actual sort of story from your background. One of your fellow senators, the Green Party's Roisin Garvey, has apologised today for offence caused to travellers after telling colleagues she learned from working with members of the ethnic minority not to use big words when trying to appeal to voters. She said, let's talk about the flowers, let's talk about the cattle, talk about the robin, the sparrow. I think colloquialism is important. And I think simple vocabulary includes everybody. So she's apologised for that because she was getting some stick. What do you think about what she said and the apology?
Last night when I read it, I laughed because it was such an innocent comment to make. I also felt like I know Roisin and I know she's a good natured person, and I know that probably more than a lot of other senators, she'll get up and she'll speak about issues that's impacting on the traveller community and on other ethnic minority groups. I believe how it was worded was very wrong. I think like, and the second time I read it, I felt that it was making travellers out to be thick, uneducated people, which a lot of traveller people are very hurt around. As a community development worker, I understand that word inclusive, and I understand what Roisin means when she says that, when you're going lobbying at a door, speak the language that people is at, without making people out to be anyway stupid, because especially in our travellers, we're everything but stupid people, we're able to survive all this length of time as a community of people. So we're actually extreme smart community. But going back to Roisin's comment, I was speaking to her last night actually, and she did ring me and she was really upset. And I said to her, look, Roisin, I understand, but the language wasn't, and her words was that she was misinterpreted by whoever the journalist was, and that was her words. But I kind of, I know what she means when she says that it needs to be inclusive. It's like the political system as a whole, it needs to be inclusive, including language. And me myself, Roisin, I'm not an academic. I read the ad thing. I'm not like, I didn't learn what I learned in the book. I learned it from my life experience, and I'm everything but thick or silly or anything. And I just think, you know, we all have a different way of learning. And for me personally, even as a senator, I'm a very sociable learner. I listen a lot, and I take in from listening than reading, but it doesn't make me tick, you know. And I think what she means is reach people where they're at. And that way there, maybe if she had said that, you know, break down the language barriers that we have, and so then it would be more inclusive for all communities. I don't think, and I'm glad she apologised, because she did single out the traveller community and people in rural Ireland. So I'm glad that she did that apology. I'm sure there's many people within our community that would be, yeah.
Well, I think your very measured response there is really testament to you, Eileen, like understanding it, but also appreciating the apology. And I think, you know, rather than rushing to kind of condemn her, seeing that she was trying to do a good thing and maybe it was a little bit clumsy, but I do think that's testament to you. Now, can we go back to your beginnings in Labrador Park and growing up as part of the travelling community? Because I would say that maybe a lot of people on this call here at this event might not have been on a halting site before. So can you tell us what it was like growing up there, and what was, you know, what was your experience of your early childhood? Because it was difficult in some ways.
And still today, I love Lavery Park. When I go up to the Oireachtas, I'll always stay in my home, and I absolutely love it. That sense of community, always being that sense of community, the sense of looking out for each other that we don't see in cities. Now you see it a little bit in rural Ireland, but you don't see it in cities at all. You know, you're very, very worried, you know, who your next door neighbour is. Growing up in Lavery, nobody was ever short of bread or milk. We always depended on each other, you know, and that was the lovely thing about it. But also that lovely sense of community, events that would take place on the site. Let that be prayer, let it be music, let it be a wedding, a funeral, whatever it may be, a christening, that it was done with celebrations, it was done family connection, and it was always lovely. Everyone would, as well as you get, like, as I say, around rural Ireland a lot at the time, living in small villages, you know, people would nearly be able to tell you what colour stockings you put on your feet in the morning, you know, so there were bits of that as well. But I loved it. And then obviously some of the negative stuff was when you walk outside the gate, that, you know, people didn't understand what it was like inside, because we're beside a recycling factory. We're very enclosed. We're beside a train station, pylons, where travellers are hidden away from society. Lavery Park is is the oldest official halting site in Ireland, so it's brilliant to be from Lavery as well. But like when you go outside of Lavery, and I remember one of my earliest memories was going down to the shops in Ballyfermot along with my mother, and feeling different, feeling that, you know, that we were getting watched. And even at a young age, you can feel the prejudice, you can feel the discrimination, if you want, or even that word that I always use, rejection. You feel that you're not the same as everybody else in the shop. And you know, as a child of 4 years of age, you don't understand what racism is. You don't understand what, like, you've no clue. You just feel different, and you don't know why, because you look the same, you know. And like, so I couldn't really understand it. But as we got older, like, my mother and father do the markets, you know, and as I got older, going to the markets with them, kind of understood what travellers meant. Because, you know, if you're caught names in the market and you go over and you say to mommy, I'm after me, and she just say, oh, those people just don't understand, after all, like, you know, and just sticks and stones will break your bones, and names have never hurt you, you know, as and like, names do hurt, you know. And so she just had her own way of dealing with it, same as me father. But yeah, overall, like, Lavery itself was because we all understood each other, you know, and got on well. But outside of Lavery, as a young person, and then some of the activities that would happen, you see on the TV,
You just muted yourself there by accident.
Yeah,
Go on,
sorry.
say that again, some of the activities.
Some of the activities that you'd see coming into the site, and when I say activities, I mean like, you know, the social welfare coming in to make sure people live in the homes that they live in, putting pressure on people within the community, the Gardaí coming in and raiding houses, and, you know, and I understand to a certain extent all the jobs and stuff, but you wouldn't see it happening in settled communities. And again, that all has an impact on your upbringing, you know, because I remember, and I wouldn't, not going into it or anything, but I do remember many, even here recently in 2017, remembering the guards coming on to Labrie and being very inappropriate to all residents, you know, and I don't think that's a very fair way to treat all members of the traveller community, you know. So.
Well, thanks for that description, because I think it's really interesting, the contrast between your experience in Labrie Park and then when you stepped outside, and what a place where you weren't accepted and you weren't understood, and even as a young child experiencing that feeling of being othered and being different. I want to remind everyone who joined us a bit later that if you go on Twitter, you are in with the chance of winning a prize of a Green and Blacks hamper, because we're proudly sponsored by Green and Blacks, and the hashtag is IT Big Night In. So do go there. I'll tell you, it's worth it. The Goldricks who are here, hi Goldricks, and some of our familiar faces, they got one before and they know how big it was. Look, they're giving the thumbs up. So do go to hashtag IT Big Night In on Twitter. Eileen, you mentioned your mother there, and she died when you were 10. And also
Yeah.
you were in a very bad car accident, which was very, very debilitating. Can you tell us a little bit about those struggles and how then in school it contributed to you kind of struggling in education at first?
Like I remember my mother at my Holy Communion, you know, and it was a lovely memory to have. And I remember the nun telling me mother that my shoes were too small for me, right? But actually my shoes wasn't too small for me, because I had an injury on my leg, and I got 40 stitches in my leg just 2 days before my Holy Communion, you know. And now I'm really good friends with Sister Carmel, but I like, in one sense it's a lovely memory, and she taking up and saying, no, Sister Carmel, our shoes are not too small for her feet. But it goes to show in one sense how we can jump to conclusions. My mother died on the 12th of October 2000, and she was a very, like, when you're 10, you know, you don't expect to lose your mother and for your life to change dramatically. So she went into hospital on a Tuesday, and she was buried on the Friday, died with pneumonia. My life changed very much from that moment, you know. A week after, 9 days later, I was in a really bad accident where a person who was drunk drove into the back of me and my uncle, and drove us underneath a bus, an 18-foot bus, and that bus hit on my left side. And I had major operations and many minor challenges looking back at it now, you know. And I didn't really realize my mother was dead until a few years later, because there was so much that was going on in my life. And although I missed her and I could feel her with me, but, you know, so much that was going on in my life at that time, you know. And morphine, getting operations every few weeks, and, you know, and looking back at it now, I think it made me the person I am today, in a sense, you know. And just to say, like, some of the doctors and nurses that I was with going back nearly 21 years ago actually got in contact with me, and some of them are still me consultants, and always say, Eileen, I knew you would do well, and we all knew you would, you know. And even the nurses, and I think that kind of made me see that life is very short, even from a very young age, you know. But I remember having an argument with my mother a few days before she died, and I wanted the Chinese, and, you know, she didn't have the money to get me a Chinese, and I do some of it. I live with the regret of telling her to f off at 10, and that is, like, that is a regret that I live with. But I never got to say goodbye to her, and so I know I miss her very much, and I know she's always with me. Like, I wouldn't, like, I have a little keyring here, and I always wear it. And I know that she's always with me, you know. So I'll be very close to her. And it did
And
have
I
a
think she knew all that banter, Eileen, didn't she? Sure, that was probably the banter you had all the time. So I'm sure that wasn't
yeah.
something that,
Yeah, no, but
uh,
like you know, when
I
you never
know it's.
really think about it, so it's yes. So I
But
think
then the
those are
memory you have of her sticking up for you to the nun about the shoes, in those
yeah,
moments that how much she was in your corner and how proud she'd be of you now. It's
yeah, yeah.
incredible. Tell us about school then, because you were kind of suspended quite a few times from school.
Yes, I was really good in primary school, and I loved it primary school. But when I came to secondary school, obviously after the accident and stuff, and then you know going by norms, that wasn't just norms in Ladbury Park, but there were norms in Ballyfermot as well. Not to complete school, you didn't have the rule that you had to be 16 or like you do today, you know. And for me, I found first year, second year, and third year in secondary school very challenging. You know, I I was out every few weeks from operations. I didn't feel part of the classroom, and my twin sister was in the classroom with me, and you know, a lot of the time I would get into little arguments because of Sally. Funny enough, and so I was always kind of the mother to Sally since my mum died, like washing the uniforms and stuff. But for Sally, anytime anyone would say anything to her, I'd jump, you know. And I did get into one or two fights in school for being, Sally was called the knacker once, and I just couldn't handle that. And then another time I was called the knacker and I couldn't handle that. But I've never pulled another woman's hair, like, you know, I've always kind of made attempts to, but it would never, I'd never go to that level. And I think, Roisin, we have to understand that when you experience so much negativity and being called an actor, being called names all of the time, you're going to retaliate back against that, you know. And for me, like, it was stopped in the school when I approached the teachers and stuff, and a lot of my teachers believed in me because I sometimes was in pain or whatever. I'd get brought out for a cup of tea and for the bar chocolate. And then I remember I used to babysit to get money so I could afford to 3 in 1, you know. And I'd babysit for all week for 3 in 1 and 20 fags on a Friday. Well, actually, it was 10 fags on a Friday when I was,
You see, got
yeah.
me with the
So,
days when you could get 10 fags, Eileen, you know what I mean?
yeah. So it was, that there was kind of, and I'd babysit all week so that me and Sally could have the money to get 3 in 1s. Or I've often said to the teacher to give us a lend of a tenner. And I remember the home economics teacher would, and like my father was good, like he would give us the fiver piece the ad week. And well, then you probably owned that fiver from the week before to the teacher, and you'd always give it back to her. So it was little things like that got us through, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I mentioned in the intro there, if people who joined us, that Sally and Eileen, so the twins, were the first in Labra Park then to come and go on to third level education, because, and we still see it now, it's still something that needs to be worked on, that minorities and people, socioeconomically challenged and all that, aren't getting through to third level, but you and Sally did. And is
Yeah.
that Billy there? Are we going to get a
Yeah.
look at Billy at some point?
Yeah, yeah. Myself and Sally got through it. Like for me, sometimes going to school got me out the house. You know, when I was finished in third year, like I just didn't want to. Um, I just wanted to keep going. And because at a point I was like, okay, because maybe I believed in myself that my parents didn't want me to keep going, so I I did. I kept her lit, as they'd say, and I kept going in school, and I started to enjoy school. But even when I was in sixth year, I was suspended for taken up for Sally by a teacher, you know. And I remember actually the vice principal saying to me, I won't suspend you. He said, what I'll do is you can go to the youth centre instead of coming to school, he said. And he said, take it as a nice day to relax yourself and stuff. And, you know, it was those little measures. Now, he wasn't treating me anyway. I was getting suspended and that was it. But he explained it to me very well. And he was the only teacher in the school that copped that I was getting into trouble because of Sally, you know. But your question was around, like, a lot of people would say to me, Roisin, would your message be you can be anything you want to be if you put your mind to it? No, you can't. You can't. When you're a member of the traveller community, it gives you less opportunities. Your economic background gives you less opportunities. Being a person of colour gives you less opportunities. Being a person with a disability gives you less opportunities. Being a migrant person, a refugee person. So we have to be very, very realistic that you know, or you can go off and be anything you want to be once you put your mind to it. That's not always the case, and it's not the case for many people, and definitely not the case for traveller people. I think, like, while we have so many access courses for traveller community and for people from other ethnic minority groups, you know, I actually think that we should have, like, I don't believe there's such a thing as equality, because for me, I think we're all different and we all have a right to be different, but we all bring equal worth to the world, and we all should be valued equally in the world, and we all should have equality of opportunities, you know. And I keep on repeating that one message, that it's not about equality. I can't straighten my left arm. You know, everybody is very different, and it's about equality of opportunities and treating people with the level of respect that you treat everybody with, you know.
Yeah, Eileen, it's lovely to see Billy. We can all give her a little wave there. And Ailish just said, thank you, Eileen, for dispelling that Disney myth that you can be anything you want to be if you put your mind to it. I think it is a message that we've kind of all been told, and some of us think that if we're not doing exactly the thing, then we're failing, you know. But it's just not possible for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Very kindly, Eileen's cousin, I think, has come over to
No,
babysit her.
that's Liam's little nephew. But sorry,
Okay.
Roisin, your question.
But anyway, Ailish was thanking you for dispelling that myth of being able to do everything. Tell us about going to Trinity.
It's very important, Ailish, to be able to dig that into politicians, into schools' head, that no, you can't. You just, like, you know, I wanted to be a nurse and I did LCA leaving cert, so that didn't give me equal access to go off and be a nurse. So that's why I'm a politician today.
I worked out anyway, Eileen, I think in the end.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of pressure, I think, on lots of young people, but say in your community, to not go on to third level, to get married very young. Those are real pressures that you experienced. What do you think it was that made you kind of turn away from those pressures and to have the strength to say, no, I'm going to carve my own path here?
Again, Roisin, you know, this is what we get from society. I was in a school last week with young traveller women, and one girl, 12 years of age, said to me, Eileen, travellers never be anything, you know. And I'm still hearing that today. And I think it's, even though there's pressures on traveller men, traveller women, cultural pressures or norms, as I like to say, norms and cultural pressure, you know, that, like, you know, I believe that many travellers don't want young people to be getting married young within our community. And I know that Pave Point would always say that if you look at the settled community, young women have children at a younger age, where traveller women get married at a younger age, you know, and I actually think it's a valid point. But I'm not saying that that women shouldn't get married or anything of the sort. What I'm saying is that society, you look outside of your house, your whole community, you see, you don't see travellers employed in the local shop, you don't see travellers being a doctor in a hospital, you don't see, it's not normalised for travellers to be in these roles. you know. So it goes in you, like, you know, with the prejudice, the prejudice that you experience, the rejection that you experience, it actually makes you into a frail person. And even though you may look strong and healthy in the outside, but you're frail in the inside, and you always feel hopeless that, like, you know, I'm only seen as the traveller, you know. And I think for many many travelers have always believed in education. My own mother and father would always believe in education. Yes, there were some challenges going to school, and it wasn't the norm where I was living. But, like, you know, I know that there's principals out there who are members of the traveller community. There is doctors out there who are members of the traveller community. There's Gardaí who are members of the traveller community. We have traveller. My friend Helen used to work in the local shop, but again, you have to hide your identity. You know, you have to hide your identity.
So,
And
Eileen, did that make you want to reject your community because of all those things that you saw? Did it make you feel like running away?
it made me wanting to reject myself, you know. And if I could actually say, when I was 25 years of age, standing up at a pro-choice march, I remember saying, like, you know, it wasn't that society, it wasn't that travellers wasn't good enough for society. It was that society wasn't good enough for us. And I realised that when there were thousands of women and people watching their travellers speak, you know. And I knew that I could use that as a platform to really, and it wasn't long before that I just, something just clicked, Roisin. Something just clicked. And as well, going to Maynooth University, that really opened up my eyes to the world. You know, going to Maynooth opened up my eyes. I had a great lecturer in Maynooth, Ona McCardle. She was absolutely, and then, like, I've got great women around me, Lorraine McMadden, I've got Siobhan O'Donoghue, amazing women that I have in my life, and men. Like, I didn't know what feminism even meant until 2012, until my friend Damien, who's a man, said to me, you know, like, do you not think that's a little bit unfair, like how women are treated and men are treated? At the time, I was going through a little bit of a personal thing with my brother, and, you know, that opened up my eyes to, you know, I'm treated this way because I'm a traveller, not just because I'm a traveller, but because I'm a woman from the traveller community. And it opened up my eyes. But in minutes, you know, I remember one of the discussions, and I was going to write an essay, and I actually can't remember if I did or not, was, can a traveller be, I wanted to do my thesis. This is what I wanted to do with Anne, but I didn't. Can a traveller be Taoiseach and still live in a halting site? That's what I really wanted to do. God, my
And
throat saying.
what do you think, Eileen? Do you think a
Um,
traveller can be Taoiseach and live in a halting site, or live in Donegal maybe?
no, actually, I don't, and I've lived that. What I mean by that is, like, you know, if I even went for in Ballyfermot, I was Eileen the traveller, you know. And so many people, like, I know, wonderful the wonderful Nan Jice, who's my inspiration, as well as the likes of Hannah McGinley, Bridget Quilligan, Anne-Marie Quilligan, these amazing women within our community, and the strength of the women within our community. You know, I've had many role models, and they may not be, if you want, up in their Oireachtas, but they're very politically educated, you know, and they've watched inequalities their whole life. And it was those women that educated me as well. But I remember, Roisin, when I was 25 in Maynooth, and I remember that question. Actually, I think I could have been 27 when it was that question, thinking, can a traveller be? And ever since then, I, you know, I would never say publicly I wanted to get into politics, but ever since then, I wanted to be the traveller that could get into politics, you know, because we see great traveller people that went into politics at a local level, we see that at a European level, and in the general elections. And, you know, the likes of TJ Hogan, Colette Caffrey from Cork, brilliant, better travellers than me, that went down this road and tried very, very hard, you know, to be successful within politics. And it doesn't mean that they're not successful. It just means that it's not the norm, you know. And I may be the first traveller that got into the Oireachtas. However, I hope I'm not the last, and I hope this is something, the beginning of something for ethnic minority groups in Ireland, you know, because I don't believe that I just want equality for travellers and not want equality for Black people, not want equality for refugees. You know, I think that would be very, like, you either want equality or you don't. You know, and
Yeah.
you can't want it for one community and not another. So for me, it's that collective approach, and you know, trying to work with communities and bring communities with me, because that's what it's all about.
Eileen, a few people here, and I know there's a few people thinking it, have said Eileen Flynn for Taoiseach. So, you know, we could do a little waggle for that. I think there's a lot of people very impressed and loving what you're saying. And you mentioned people of colour there, and we've seen the Black Lives Matter movement this year particularly kind of explode, hopefully to have some longer lasting effects than usual, and people speaking out about racism in Ireland. And it has had a huge impact, but I think the casual racism, almost everyday racism that travellers experience, almost as part of our culture in a way that's not remarked upon. Was it interesting to you to see the kind of furore about Black Lives Matter, but at the same time to know that casual racism that goes on all the time against travellers? What were your thoughts on all of that?
I actually think racism is racism, you know, and I believe even if it's casual, if it's not casual, it still hurts, you know. And to be honest with you, Roisin, and to be very blunt, I don't feel that, like, I feel that it's more normal to say knacker drinking. It's more normal to say the pikeys and use very bad words post traveller community. That's more normalised, and it's even used even within the settled community to each other as well, that came from the traveller community. So yes, I think it is more casual. However, I will not take away the Black Lives Matters movement, and I think that the Black Lives Matters movement has given us all power to speak up and to speak out for each other. And again, you know, many of me, like, I don't like when someone says, oh, I have a friend who's a traveller. Like, come on, you know. But I have like, a lot of my friends will be from a lot of different communities, and I think it's about standing side by side and to create that equality for us all. You know, I think even like white Irish people, white settled people would actually say travellers can't experience racism.
Yeah.
You know, I've experienced it my whole life. My family has, other members of the traveller communities experienced their whole life. And who's like, who's another community to tell us who we are as people? Who's that? Who's the other community to say this is who you are as an ethnic minority group? We know who we are ourselves, you know. And again, it's just like, for me personally, I think racism is wrong at every single angle, and I've experienced it at a personal level and with my family and stuff. And I'd imagine it would hurt a Black person very much to be to get a racist attack or to be attacked because of the colour of their skin.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Your daughter Billy, who we can hear there and we saw earlier, was born last year, and you spoke very powerfully to Jen Hogan in the Irish Times a couple of weeks ago about that experience. Can you sort of paint the picture for people about when you're a traveller going into the maternity services, what you experience? And I know that you also suffered postnatal depression, as so many women do, and there still is such a stigma about it. So I think what you spoke about was very interesting. If you wouldn't mind telling us a bit about that.
Yeah, for me, I went into the maternity hospital, and I was anxious. I was very anxious. I suffer really bad with anxiety, and my anxiety went right through the roof when as soon as I found out I was pregnant, you know. And I found it, I didn't find that the hospital met me where I was at, you know. Like, sometimes you would, like, talking about Roisin from the Greens, the senator, making that comment, like, sometimes doctors would think you can't read or write, you know, that would really be patronising you and saying stuff in a patronising way to traveller people. But for me, going in was, if you want to say, it was a very negative experience, you know, that I was so anxious. I had depression afterwards. I got sent home, Roisin, the morning I had Billy. The doctor told me I was allowed to go home today. So I postponed a scan that I was meant to have at 11 o'clock, and I said I'll have it at 2 o'clock after a protest. I went to a protest in Letterkenny, and so I went back to have the scan, and then she wanted to be born, you know. And this one moment, Connor, would you just please, so at that point, she wanted to be born, but it was like I was told by the consultant. Now, let me be very honest, the midwives were brilliant, you know, but it was the consultant to me that was very patronising. That, like, you know, that explained things extreme, like saying A, B, C, that he just didn't understand me, and I didn't know if I was going to have a section or a normal birth, and Billy. He told me I'll find out at 37 weeks. I had Billy at 36 weeks, you know. And again, he wasn't giving me any information. My blood test was coming back, but I wasn't knowing anything. And I don't think any woman is going to go to a maternity hospital unless she felt sick. Like, you know, when you're pregnant, when you go into the hospital, you're not going for the good of your health. You're going because just because you're sick, you know what I mean? You're going because you feel genuinely, you feel unwell, you know. So for me, that's what it was like. And again, the midwives were lovely, but again, I got sent home. Although I told the doctor at 10 o'clock in the morning I wasn't feeling well, he told me I was getting home at 2 o'clock, and then that I had the baby, I had Billy he told me I was getting home, sorry, as soon as I got the scan done, because at first, that Wednesday before I had Billy, when I went in, I remember I left the National Traveller Women's Forum at the same time. I was, do you know, sepsis. I was told that I could be sepsis, and I nearly died. You know, I just nearly died, and the shock of that alone nearly killed me. But then it was my sodium levels that was very low. But I just felt I didn't know what was going on, you know, and it was a horrible experience. And then the postnatal depression afterwards, you know, like after I had Billy, all I did was cry. And I kept thinking that I was going to lose her, And even still, sometimes I still could say I woke all night watching her. It's just that.
And was that to do, Eileen, with you being a traveller, and then if they thought that you couldn't cope or something, that you'd have more discrimination against you, kind of thing?
Oh yeah, no, we've heard stories going back through history that, you know, even years ago, that like did you ever heard of the boogeyman? Like, when in our community, the boogeyman was the person that come around and take children, you know, and actually genuinely would. Now I'm talking back at least 40, 50 years ago, you know. And for me, I was terrified that I was the traveller who was, like, you know, sometimes you feel judged because I was white in the face. I was all I did when I was pregnant and Billy was drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. I was that worried, you know. My diet wasn't great. I wasn't great myself, my anxiety, and they didn't recognize it. Like, they just didn't recognize what I was going through, and it was horrible. Yeah, but look, I have her now, and there's the positive thing about it, and she's just brilliant, you know. She's just great. Yeah.
Well, listen, speaking of children, I heard you speak very powerfully in the Shannon about the children being left behind, you know, particularly in this pandemic. So, you know, everyone's been affected, and lots of us on this call are affected. But, you know, as we know, people who are in really dire situations anyway are being affected the worst. Is that one of the things you're trying to talk about in the government, you know, in politics, and trying to get people to pay attention to?
Yes, I am 100%, and I raised it in the first meeting I was at in the education committee, that, you know, that we can't, especially in the middle of this pandemic, that the children who'd already fell through the holes and who will continue to fall through the loops, they're the children that we have to mind. they're like, you know, and they're the children that we have to make sure will get a good education during this pandemic. You know, Roisin, from working in a national organisation before I got this, before I got nominated, I will say that I know some of the issues that's going on in Halton sites for many families, that children, you know, not having washing machines, not having safe accommodation, not having hot water, not having electricity, all these big accommodation issues. And like how you're sending your child to school, and in some cases a lot of children can't afford laptops, don't have broadband, all this kind, and the learning online, that there can be an inequality for many children. And I know it is an issue for traveller children, is not having not having the technology to be able to do online classes.
Yeah. I just want to remind people that you can put your blue hand up, because we're going to be asking questions in a few minutes. But also, there's a lot of comments coming through on Twitter, hashtag IT Big Night In, if you all want to go there, because like I said, it'd be nice to get a bit of trending going on. And one of the comments, Eileen, was, I have always watched my language around racist phrases and never used them. But to my great shame, I was using knacker drinking at the beginning of lockdown because I hadn't even realised it was a traveller's slur, and now I've stopped. So, I mean, there is that as well, people not even being conscious of their words.
But see, like, we can spend our whole lives fighting with each other, Roisin. We can, like, you know, and we can spend our whole lives, because we matter, you matter, we all matter. The fact of the matter is, every single one of us matter. We all matter, and we all should be treated equal in the world. And I think, like this, I appreciate that comment. I appreciate that, you know, that people are willing to learn and are open to learning and want to listen to traveller people, because I think it's so important, the dialogue. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is that dialogue, is that, you know, like I've had like people come up to me and say, I used to think this and think that, but they're educated. They're now educated and they no longer think that. So I think you're better to get people on your side and help you to be an ally, to be a person that we can turn to and look, like, because we have to be very realistic. There's 40,000 travellers in Ireland, you know, and all we're looking for is to be treated with the same respect as quite settled people within Ireland. We don't even fill up like half of Croke Park, you know what I mean? So, like, and yet we suffer very bad inequalities in Ireland, you know. So I'm sorry, because the background noise is
no, it's lovely. It's just a lovely baby making her noises, and I know we all love it, and we go like that to say we love it because it's gorgeous. And like, you know, it's really important what you just said. And just a couple of statistics for people: men in the traveller community are 7 times more likely to die by suicide. Women are 6 times more likely to die by suicide. The lifespan of men and women is lower, and members of the traveller community are more likely to be homeless. So there are just those bold statistics and facts.
Like 1 out of 11 deaths within our community is caused by suicide, you know. And basically, like, what we're looking for as a community and from the organisations, the National Traveller Health, National Mental Health group, are looking for just that equal of opportunity, you know, to be able to have access to counsellors who are cultural appropriate, to understand the issues within our community, to have access when you go to a mental health service, you know. And sometimes, Roisin, while we're all educated and we want to be educated, there's so many people out there who are not educated, and unfortunately they don't want to be educated. It's just them travellers, them refugees, them, and never want to kind of say, come in, tell me, what is it? How can we support each other? Like, even when we even talk about women equality, you know, I think, and this here is a quote I always say, we're not looking to take anything off any woman. What we're looking for is a hand up, you know, and we're not looking for a hand out or anything like that. We're looking for a hand up. We're looking for to be around those spaces, political spaces, other national women's networks. We're looking to be part of the discussion, you know,
Yeah.
and we may
Well,
have different views, but we're looking to be part of.
yeah. Eileen, I know everyone here is so impressed by it because I have this, after doing this a while, I have this sense of the audience, and I just can see that everyone is gripped to your words, really following you so closely. And I know they're dying to ask some questions. So, Suzanne, we're going to open it up to questions now, just for a little bit. And just while I do, just a reminder about the hashtag IT Big Night In, but also that you can, if you can spread the word about these events, the tickets are going to sell on. And remember that every event you can watch back. If anyone misses one, it's going to be available. So it's not like they'll miss out on anything. I'm loving seeing all your faces. It's just gorgeous. Valda, Tanya Sweeney there from the Irish Times, Lynn and Kathy and Clodagh. Anyway, whoever has your blue hands up, Suzanne, who are we going to go to?
So Fiona, you have your hand up. So I'm just going to ask to unmute you if that's okay. So we should be able to hear you in just a second. If you can just allow yourself to be unmuted so we can hear you, that would be great.
You ready, Fiona?
There we go.
I can see my ma there. See Anne Ingle there with her lovely scarf in her bedroom.
We should
Hello,
have,
Mom.
yeah,
I think I'm unmuted now.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm actually on my daughter's computer. My name is Sue. No, I was at a webinar yesterday in relation to cyber harassment and women in politics, and the figures were absolutely horrendous. And I just hope that Eileen never experiences some of the things that were shared by different people that were speaking at it. But I just wondered, is there anything going on in the Shannon in relation to trying to get some kind of legislation to tackle this? Because if somebody does something foul on the street to a woman, like, they can be taken away, but it's kind of an insidious crime, you know, online. I just wondered, are we going to make any progress on that?
To be honest with you, the last or what I know of around cyber bullying is Coco's Law, and I know that is trying to get Coco's Law for young women who's died by suicide because of bullying online. Around women in politics, I am looking. Like, we're looking at bringing back women together in the Oireachtas, and to be able to get conversations like that going. I think you're right. And to be honest with you, since a man in the Shannon told me that I was only a token Sikh, that was very hurtful. I know that the Caherlock, I can actually say Caherlock proper now.
Can I just tell everyone, there's a video of Eileen on the internet of her trying to say Caherlock in the Shannon, and it was so lovely because everyone came in to tell you. But it's a really tricky word, in fairness.
Yeah. So and the Caherlock was approached me and was saying to me that there's a protocol that you can sign in a form if you were bullied, if you were sexual assault, or if you've experienced racism, or not racism, sorry, sexism. So I know that there is a form there, and I know that there is something in place, but that's in the Oireachtas itself, you know. And I know that the women put it together in the last term. So yeah, and I think you're right. I have messages that length of racism, of discrimination and stuff. But for me, I genuinely think, fuck it, you know. I'm not going to be wasting my time challenging probably what is white men that just, you know, have nothing good to say about a traveller woman, have nothing good to say about black women, have nothing good to say about anybody, probably don't even have anything good to say about themselves. I like, you know, my own mental health. I'm only coming out of a mental health crisis, if you want, and trying to move on. And I think the internet can be poisoned as well as being something positive. So even sometimes people who follow me, or people who message me or text me on social media, I might not even get back for 2 weeks, because I tend to I'm gone really good at just switching off from it, because, you know, people can only hurt you if you give them the power to do so.
Yeah. Eileen, thank you for that brilliant answer. I want to get a few more questions in, so maybe Suzanne will go to somebody else. And thanks very much, everyone, for your great questions and comments. There's some lovely love coming to you there on the comments, Eileen. People are just so impressed and really loving this conversation, so thank you.
So we have Breda. So I'm just going to unmute you, Breda, if you can. Oh, we should have Breda there if you want to ask your question now.
Hi, Breda.
Hi, and actually, I think Eileen has already answered my question in her last comment, but I just wondered, does she feel in the Shannon that she gets the respect she deserves? And I kind of feel the fact that somebody told her she was only a token seat is already answering that. Like, she's sitting there with guys who are playing golf in Clifton in the middle of a pandemic. So I think, you know, she can hold her head up very high, and there's others who can't. And with the Shannon is full of failed politicians, and some people we admire and some people we don't. So I'm hoping that she feels the respect we have for her in the channel. I'd love to hear what she said about that.
Yeah, thanks, Breda. Thanks very much for your comment. I'm actually in a group called the Civil Engagement Group, and in my group there's Alice Murray Hegan, there's Lynn Yuan, and there's Frances Black and myself. So as far as I know, we're the only group that's women within the Shannon. And you know, I bounce off them, I speak to them, I put suggestions forward. We had a lovely all-day event yesterday, even though it was on social media or on Zoom, but it was still lovely because we got to bounce off each other, and I have an equal voice in that group. And probably, if you want to say, because they're so excited to have not like to have a woman in the group, but a traveller woman who can think for herself, who's very very strategic, and you know, I just get on really well with them. I've got good relationships with majority of the men, and just to point out, it was an independent person who said it to me, and for me, it's not about being in a fight all the time. To me, it's about the dialogue, positivity, to trying to, like, there's so many senators in there that has never passed the bill, that has never even brought a bill forward or a motion forward. And for me, for the last 3 months in this role, I've been working my arse off, you know, to prove myself to the community, to my own community, but to wider society as well. Like, Thomas McCarthy, a traveller artist, said to me, Eileen, you know, you must find it tough working for so many, like, you know, you're not just a traveller senator, you're working within for the settled community as well. And, you know, many a time, even for rural Ireland, like, I care very much for Ardra in Donegal, which is now home to me and home to Billy, you know, that, and like, and Labrie, obviously Labrie will always be my home, but it's my daughter's home, Donegal as well. And you know, like, some of the inequalities and stuff that you see here, even in rural Ireland, you know, and some of the comments that you can get in rural Ireland from men and from politicians and stuff. But for me to date, my experience has been more positive than negative, and I think that, yeah,
that's great to hear, Eileen. Suzanne, do we have a couple more questions, or anybody else's hand up, or anybody on Twitter that might want to?
Yeah, we have Aoife G on Zoom, so I'm just going to unmute you, Aoife, if that's all right.
Aoife, are you there? Are you unmuted? Eileen, this has been so great. And
we have Aoife now.
Hiya, so it's actually Cleana. I'm Aoife's sister. I'm
Aoife, come in. We can't see you, Aoife.
I am researching homelessness in the Dublin region at the moment, and I am wondering, just from you mentioned the statistics on traveller homelessness. I was just wondering, Eileen, do you think we need to introduce traveller-specific homeless services or increase training within current homeless services specifically to support members of the traveller community?
I think the training is a good starting point, you know, and I don't believe that I'm the voice of every single traveller person in Ireland, so I don't think it'd be very fair for me to give, oh, I think you should have traveller specific services. I think right now it's about getting that training. It's about engaging with travellers throughout the homeless sector. For me, I worked in a Paula House, volunteer in a Paula House, and what I think in a Paula House, a lot of the residents were members of the traveller community, never spoke about it. A lot of people don't want to identify as travellers because they're afraid, as well as being homeless, to experience racism and discrimination. You know, kind of a lot of the stuff, like even local authorities need to be held to account to look after all communities, especially the traveller community. They get millions of euros every single year that they don't draw down. And a lot of white certain people would think, oh, we're spending our taxes and traveller accommodation, this and that, which is not one bit true. You know, some local authorities would get 12 million euro and not spend it, like not spend it, because who wants the traveller to live beside them? You know, there's a very interesting survey done, and it's the behaviour and attitudes was launched in October 2017, and you'll see that 80% of people, I'm sure it's 80% of people now, don't because we head on Saturday, that wouldn't live beside a member of the traveller community. We think in Carrick Mines, going back like it'll be 5 years next Saturday, that the family were put in a car park because of the local community, the settled community, that didn't want the travellers beside them. So I think there's a lot of inequalities, but it's not just as like homeless in the inner city. I think it's way bigger than that, you know, and I think it does need to be addressed. Right now, we don't even have a junior minister for housing that can look after
Eileen, we're going to have to wrap up.
Thank you.
I just know that everyone was. I'm just going to bring you a couple of comments because I think you'll appreciate them. I'm so often reminded, says Jean Kelly, as I listen to Eileen, what Kamala Harris's mom said to her daughter as they grew up: "You may be the first, but you won't be the last," which is a really lovely comment. And Anya says, "My uncle campaigned for Nan Joyce and unfortunately passed away last November, so didn't live to see your achievement. I remember him giving us a lift and getting stopped by the special branch purely because of his work. I really hope the progress continues." And there were so many lovely comments, Eileen. I'm so grateful to you and for giving up your Saturday, and you know, with the baby there as well. It was lovely to see her. And to everyone that's here, I've got the lovely big night in buzz again, because it's just great to see you all. And just tell everyone about Goldricks, and tell everyone about this, because the tickets are going on. We have an amazing lineup for you. Next time, in 2 weeks, we have the Glamour Editor-in-Chief, Samantha Barry, who's going to join us from New York. And she was at Amal and George Clooney's wedding, so she better have some good stories.
Could I, Roisin, could I just say thanks to everybody for being open to learning and to listening to me this evening. And again, there's so much negativity in the world, so much racism, so much badness going on in the world that we all live in today, that it's good to just sit around and to answer questions that I'm asked. So thanks so much to everybody who's
I think it's time for the waggle hand thing, is it? This is us saying to you, we're so grateful for everything. Thanks to the audience, who, as always, have been so beautiful tonight. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Eileen, the biggest thanks to you. You've made this first night of our second season so special. We're so grateful. Go to irishtimes.com/big-night-in. Tell your friends about it too. And go on Twitter now if you're on social media, #ITBigNightIn. And we'll see you soon. Eileen, we're so grateful. You're amazing. Thanks everyone. It's so lovely to see you. Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you.